Good morning and assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to the mid-morning talk show with myself, your guest presenter Fasiha Davids. Excited to be interviewing Madison Bannon again. She is with us. She was with us just about 2 weeks ago, and we were speaking about the DTIC protest regarding the coal embargo that is the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition. And she joins us again today, and we're kind of going to revisit that and follow up on where we last touched base. Madison Bannon is an activist, mom, and storyteller living in Johannesburg. She builds movements for social and planetary good through creativity, network weaving, and writing. You can find her work and publications in the Daily Maverick, Waging Nonviolence, and on her podcast, The Delve. Thank you so much for joining us, Madison.
Thank you for having me, Fasiha.
Sure. So let's talk about the DTIC protest, right? So for listeners and viewers who maybe, didn't watch our previous interview, and is a bit confused about what's kind of going on regarding the coal embargo in South Africa, let's give them some context. So the last time we spoke about a protest happening at the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition. Yeah. And it was regarding the fact that South Africa sends coal to Israel. And you spoke to, I think it was 14 to 17% of that coal was powering the Israeli electric board, which they are then in turn using to fuel the genocide. And that's what we kind of touched base on in our last interview. So maybe if we can elaborate on that for listeners and viewers, and kind of bring it to where we are now in terms of the movement regarding energy embargo, and your activism around that.
Sure, absolutely. So since October of 2023, South Africa has sold 1.6 million tons of our coal to Israel. It leaves via Richards Bay and goes on ships of about 100,000 tons each. There's actually a ship that left in late July that is arriving on the shores of Israel right now through the Hadera port, I believe. They actually turn off the ship geolocation data when it gets into the Mediterranean, when it gets close to Israeli shores, to prevent activists from stopping it at a later stage. But we know it's set to arrive around now. We rely on eyewitness reports once it gets into the Mediterranean. But yeah, since October 2023, we've sent 1.6 million tons of South African coal. Most of that is mined through Glencore, largest mining company in the world, as well as African Rainbow Minerals from Patrice Motsepe, and some other companies as well. And the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition oversees the processing of that sale. The sale goes from corporations to Israel directly. It's not South Africa making money necessarily, but DTIC oversees that. So we've been putting a lot of pressure for a year and a half now on Glencore specifically, but this time we moved our action to DTIC headquarters in Pretoria, in Cape Town, and in Durban, where we had 3 simultaneous actions. There were, I was at the Pretoria one. We had well over 100 people there, which was great. We had a small occupation inside the offices, which was exciting and invigorating as an activist, and really helped us to build a narrative and to get it out into the media. So we thought it was successful. At the same time, Minister Parks Tau was conveniently in Japan. So he wasn't there to receive the memorandum directly, though a memorandum was handed over to a spokesperson, and we are following up with the minister as well. There has been communication from DTIC that they would meet with us. That hasn't happened, but we are continuing to put pressure on DTIC and on the minister to meet with us, hear our demands, walk through the case, and hopefully get an energy embargo on the books as soon as possible.
Thank you so much for that insight, and I think providing context for listeners and viewers, Madison. So I mean, you spoke about 2 kind of target areas here, one being the DTIC, at least locally. So one being the DTIC, that's the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition, and then Glencore. And with the DTIC, like you said, the minister wasn't here to receive the memo, but he gave it to a spokesperson as activists and as a collective. So you guys are still following up on that. What's happening with Glencore? Were they able to kind of give activists and the ground feedback in terms of, their stance and how they're going to proceed?
Well, they've accepted our memorandums as well. But I would say as an activist, I don't really expect Glencore to move. I think it's up to the government to force Glencore to behave. Glencore, actually, it's the largest mining company in the world, but it was only founded quite recently, I want to say in the 70s, by a known criminal. Yeah, like a locked up criminal now. And so they're just on their third CEO at this point. This is a really fresh company, and their founding is really sinister. So I am not expecting much out of Glencore. I think it's up to the government to put a stop to our complicity and to end the trade. We have an example of that in Colombia. While corporations there have also been circumventing that energy embargo, I think it's really up to the government to take that stand. And I wanted to just say that there is also precedent for when the government refuses to, the workers can really put a stop to that trade. There's so many places where the coal moves from our ground to Israel's grid, that there are so many places that it can be stopped. And we have the legal obligation and precedent set to be able to do that. We're seeing those kinds of actions happening in Greece and in France, dock workers refusing to load coal onto ships. So this is also an option that we could do from our side, from the workers. I know we've got support within SAFTU and COSATU. This is places where we could really be organizing better and organizing, among workers to say, we're not going to participate as people in the moving of our coal over to Israel.
I mean, that's pretty interesting, right? To speak to the workers and trade unions in general, and I think trade unions took quite a shift in South Africa in terms of how they organize themselves over this past 10 to 15 years in particular. And obviously that was also influenced by a lot of political affiliation, and kind of just the politics of the country. It is such a moving chessboard all the time. And so it's really difficult to kind of keep up with where trade unions are at now, with workers in specific industries. And really, I just want to understand where you think, as an activist yourself, the pressure, where should we be applying pressure now, or where should the ground, civil society, maybe if we make it more broader, even the public, be applying the pressure? Because you're saying, yes, we've applied pressure to Glencore, but for Glencore to really make any change, they need to be pressurized by government. But in order for government to be pressurized, you're protesting at the DTIC. But the DTIC, we're waiting still on feedback there. However, the ground can kind of intervene in terms of the transportation of coal from here before it gets to the Israeli grid. So there's, again, so many moving parts, but I think that paints somewhat of a map for civil society, for the public, for activists. In terms of SAFTU and COSATU and bringing it back to trade unions, where do you think the public should kind of focus themselves now? And how do you think, this next week should kind of play out in terms of, I don't know, pressurizing government, I guess?
Yeah, I do think that the pressure should remain on the government. I think that's who we need to be pressuring. But I think there's an opportunity to organize among trade unionists, among workers who are already on the side of Palestine. They understand these issues, very fundamentally: oppression, extraction, all of that. Those impact their lives directly. So I don't think we need to position ourselves as activists or as civil society in opposition to trade unions, but we need to be organizing among the people to continue to put pressure on those higher structures of governance within trade unions, and then towards the government itself. So those are our allies. The workers are our allies. And if they are empowered to, empowered to say the buck stops with us, then they can do it. And I think that there is a lot of resonance there. But ultimately, the pressure is on DTIC, it's on Parks Tau, it's on the president.
All right. Well, thank you for that clarification, Madison. I mean, so many moving parts. I just kind of had to map it out in my brain myself, and for listeners and viewers tuned into the show. So Saftu and Kasatu, like you said, these are allies in the space, and and there's an opportunity here to kind of mobilize around workers and workers' unions. And I mean, this is an interesting point that you're making, because this is happening in the global north right now. Like you said, you're seeing a lot of this happen in France even. There were some practical examples there. So with this opportunity, how do you think we should kind of move forward? What would your advice be to activists? And if you don't want to be put in the seat and the pressure of the seat of giving advice, just maybe your thoughts in terms of how we should move forward as a collective.
Sure. Yeah, I think putting that public pressure for an energy embargo, making that public call for an energy embargo is really powerful. So my advice or my invitation to anybody listening is to join that call, join our actions, get involved, organize with us. If we can turn those 150-person actions into, 1,500 or whatever, 3,000-person actions, that would mean a lot. And then the government would really be able to see actively that the people are behind this. I just want to talk quickly about one of the pushbacks that we get even from trade union leadership as well as from government, and it's a fine argument to make that the worry is if we aren't selling that coal to Israel, that we are jeopardizing jobs here in South Africa. And so there, I just want to reiterate again that the majority of people within the trade unions are on this side, or on the side of Palestine, on the side of an energy embargo, and that coal and extractivism is harming those communities as much as it is also employing them. It's not a good thing for the planet or for the people that work there. So if we can, prioritize other things besides coal and selling it to Israel, that would be great. But in terms of our exports to Israel, so Israel relies on South African coal. We're one of their biggest suppliers of coal. But for exports from a South African side, Israel is not one of our biggest buyers. So getting rid of that streamline towards Israel would not negatively impact our economy or our jobs. We could sell that coal elsewhere. We could keep that coal inside South Africa and use it to meet our energy needs, or we could channel all of that into green energy, which would be better for everybody and the planet. But at a very first step, we don't need to be selling this coal to Israel. It is not keeping our economy afloat. It is not keeping people employed. We could be directing that coal elsewhere.
Thank you so much. I think that was some, insight for myself, but also for listeners and viewers at home, because often when we get this pushback, we need to kind of start thinking about then what are the alternatives in place, and you've presented three very viable, sensible alternatives, and the question is, why hasn't government then done it yet? So interesting. I mean, an entire ICJ case, declaring the model stance as a government, yet they are still maintaining trade with Israel, and coal is not the only thing that South Africa is trading. So we're going to explore a bit more about the politics of our governance, and the trade with our government and Israel after the break.
River bordering the Kruger National Park. As a guest at Buckler's Africa Lodge, one can enjoy an amazing sunrise or sunset on our spacious deck area while you catch a glimpse of some wildlife sightings along the Crocodile River. The sounds of the African savannah will greet you whilst you enjoy your morning coffee. Buckler's Africa Lodge by Tingana Collection. Buckler's Africa Lodge is ideally situated only 6 kilometers from the Crocodile Bridge Gate in the Kruger National Park. Catering for all travelers with variety, we have 4 types of the finest rooms: superior rooms, deluxe rooms, deluxe suites, and 2-bedroomed family units. Each room is equipped with the finest amenities to make your stay unforgettable. Guests can choose between the self-catering option or book their accommodation with breakfast and dinner included. Buckler's Africa Lodge is your ideal location for the ultimate Kruger getaway experience. We specialize in exhilarating and educational game drives in Kruger, tailor-made to suit your family. Inquire about our various accommodation offerings and other activities. Visit www.tingana.co.za for more information. Buckler's Africa Lodge by Tingana Collection. Experience the pulse of Africa with us.
Discover the Africa of your dreams and surround yourself with her spectacular beauty. Relax beneath her serene sunsets and explore wildlife at its natural best. It's where the pride of Africa comes together. The Kwantu Private Game Reserve. Get to know the Big Five or cruise on an elephant safari game drive. Interact with lion and tiger cubs and enjoy world-class halal cuisine while we pamper you during your 5-star stay. Indulge in the true African experience. For reservations, call now on 042-203-1400 or visit kwantu.co.za. The Kwantu Private Game Reserve, the place of gathering.
World-class financial services only at Sapphire Global, your financial partner. If you are looking for Islamic, Sharia, and ethical financial products, look no further. Sapphire Global offers a wide range of financial service offerings from short-term to life and investments. A full-service center with all financial requirements under one brand. Our highly skilled and experienced consultants are ready to help protect your financial future. Contact us on 041 001 0184 or visit our website on www.sapphireglobalfs.com. Sapphire Global is an authorized financial services provider.
Kids these days are smart, and when you're competing for their attention against their smartphones, you need to make smart choices, like using Sunfoil triple refined pure sunflower oil in every meal you make. It's naturally cholesterol-free and approved by the Heart and Stroke Foundation as part of a balanced eating plan. So whether you're cooking, frying, or baking, you get the great tasting results that'll get their attention faster than the latest app. And if that doesn't work, change the Wi-Fi password. Sunfoil. Now we're cooking.
It's a new beginning. It's a new era. Salam Media. Humanitarian journalism.
Good morning and assalamu alaikum. If you just joined us, welcome back. To those who were tuned in before the break, this is the mid-morning talk with myself, your guest presenter for today, Fasiha Davids. I am joined by Madison Bannon. She is an activist, mom, and storyteller, living and working very hard in Johannesburg on the ground and digitally, doing some amazing work. Madison, again, thank you for being with us. We touched base on the TTIC protest, on the energy embargo, and just before the break, we spoke about government and governance, right? And so the government element was we're looking at where should the pressure go from the public, from civil society, and understanding the politics of our government, that they have taken they have taken Israel to the ICJ, the International Court of Justice. They have done so under the Genocide Convention. They have called them out. They have declared their moral stance in being pro-Palestine, pro-human rights, pro-life, essentially. Yet they still maintain ties with Israel. And this speaks to the governance and the economy, right? And so this is really interesting because there are alternative ways that the coal that's mined here in South Africa could be exported, if not turned into green energy that would be more appropriate for our climate, given the climate crisis that we're in as a world, right, as an entire planet. And so this is interesting to unpack. Let's explore South Africa's relations then with Israel, and in terms of trade, what else outside of coal is being traded with Israel? And yeah, let's kind of I don't know, connect the dots for listeners and viewers at home.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm thinking that I could describe it as like at the ICJ, South Africa is speaking with its heart. And on the day to day, South Africa is acting with its pocket in mind. So we do a lot of trade with Israel. Our total exports in 2024 worked out to $178.2 million in exports to Israel. So $73 million of that was in fuel, which is powering the genocide. $26.5 million of that is in precious stones, your diamonds and your emeralds and all of that, which we sell to Israel unrefined, and then they sell it back to us, all cut and pretty and shined for $15 million in 2024, which is a trade that just nobody needs to survive. Nobody can eat diamonds. So yeah, that to me is just wild. But then we also sold them $56 million worth of food in 2024. That was $25 million of fruits, vegetables, and nuts, which was up from 2023 when we sold only $14 million worth of fruit, vegetables, and nuts. So this is healthy food we are sending to Israel, while people in this country go hungry, don't know where their next meal is coming from. That food could be subsidized by the government, right? If we wanted to make a change and say we're not doing trade with Israel anymore, the government could take that amount of food, subsidize it for at-home consumption, or again, we could find alternative markets for it. It wouldn't be that hard to sell it to somewhere else, to Spain or, to our neighbors in the SADC region. But yeah, it's almost R1 billion worth of food that we sold to Israel in 2024 while they are starving Gaza. So the Israelis are eating our food while they starve Gaza.
I mean, I don't know whether to be outraged in this moment just listening to those statistics, or saddened by the fact that I'm reminded that the UN last week declared Gaza as a full-blown famine. So they've moved beyond starvation. Then there was the IPC report that came out that spoke about the different phases of famine and starvation. And the final phase is phase 5, which is the worst level of famine that a country can, or a population in an area, in a given geography, can undergo. And Gaza is experiencing phase 5 of a full-blown famine right now. And I mean, that absolutely saddens me and any other human being. And then knowing back home here in South Africa that food poverty, food insecurity is something that's very felt and experienced in townships and in rural communities where there is little accessibility and resources, and so this is, I mean, it's very disturbing, and I think that listeners and viewers at home can resonate with that given these staggering statistics. So this kind of brings me back to the question that I posed before the break. What do you think? And I know you spoke about this mind and heart and pocket, right? But it also makes me think about politics versus symbolism, right? So, I mean, the ICJ case, a fully fledged case, you have facts being presented to a court, structures that exist within a society, and not just in a society, on the global stage, right? Because it's for the world, the International Court of Justice under the United Nations. And there are no tangible results coming from that for Palestinian people in terms of their lived experience. So yes, it has influenced media. Yes, it's going to influence history. Yes, this does make a big change symbolically, given that this didn't just start on October 7th, this has started 76 years ago. And so in no way am I taking away the importance of the case or the need thereof, or even the contributions that the case makes to progress, political progress, social progress, and to the liberation of Palestinian people. But if I'm speaking about urgent action on the ground, lived experiences of Palestinian people, that kind of just becomes symbolic in terms of what's happening on the ground. And what's practical is that South Africa remains and keeps and kind of maintains their diplomatic ties and their hold with Israel. I mean, how do we then challenge this when this is a clear double standard, some might say?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think we can see, again, just to reiterate, there is so much value to adding to the legal framework, the ICJ case and the Hague Group. It means that there is a certain level of accountability, but it is a long-term look. It is not a tangible change on the ground for the people in Gaza experiencing the famine. And I think this is something that I struggle with as an activist every day is what are my actions doing to save a life? I don't know that we can ultimately say that. There is the humanitarian effort. There's sending money to food kitchens and mutual aids, which of course there's gift to the givers. And then there's also a lot of small kitchens on the ground in Gaza that you can get funding to. And I recommend looking into that for every person because it does translate into food for people. But I think ultimately the place where we have the opportunity to make the most impact is really in that energy embargo. If Israel doesn't have power for its grid, it will crumble. The military infrastructure will crumble. It cannot survive without, it's 17% of the Israeli grid is powered by coal. So if you took away 17% of their energy output, think about what we're experiencing here in South Africa when we have load shedding and everything comes to a halt and the impact that has on our ability to maintain our economy and maintain a normalcy in our lives. So if we could affect the Israeli grid by taking away 20% of its output, that would have a massive impact on its ability to commit genocide and its ability to power the illegal settlements and to power the occupation. So that is the place where I think we have the most tangible impact, possible impact on the genocide and ending the genocide. And then the other thing is really just to put a ton of pressure on the powers within the United Nations that have the veto power. So I'm talking about putting a ton of pressure on the US, putting a ton of pressure on Germany, the UK, those countries that ultimately are, supplying Israel with weapons and give them the freedom to do whatever they want and just keep looking the other way whenever they commit war crimes and atrocities. They just keep looking the other way and saying, no, it's fine. We'll just keep sending you the fighter jets and everything that you need to continue the genocide. So when we rise up and act as moral leaders in the space, even as a public, even if our government doesn't translate that into tangible logistics, we are putting pressure on a global scale that affects the United States. It affects movements in the UK. They are looking to South Africa. They are looking to our activists as moral leaders. So we should continue to be that for the world. And that ultimately, again, it makes a long-term change, but it is a change. And so that is the importance of keeping our movement strong and vocal.
That's absolutely powerful. Thank you for sharing that with us, Madison. And I think it reinforces the message of local is global, and in the world of globalization, just how interconnected all these struggles are, but also how interconnected all the powers that be kind of are and influence one another as actors on a global stage. We don't have a lot of time left, and I know you want to make some important announcement for activists, for public society. What is this announcement about, please? Make this announcement.
I'm very excited to share. So I'm sure many of you have heard of the flotillas, the freedom flotillas that sail to Gaza with humanitarian aid. There is a new flotilla leaving in the next coming days. It's called the Global Samud Flotilla. There are maybe 40 plus countries represented there, and South Africa is sending a team of 9 delegates. We're waiting. People's paperwork is in process right now. So between 9 and probably 11 delegates. with the Global Samud Flotilla. It's the largest civilian maritime mission in history to attempt to break Israel's siege on Gaza. And yeah, they'll be leaving in the next couple days. We're looking to have an event on August 31st at Zoo Lake in Johannesburg to send some well wishes and commemorate their leaving. That'll be at 10 a.m. At Zoo Lake, August 31st, which is Sunday, to send some well wishes to our crew of 9. I can't reveal many more details at this stage, but the media should be coming out soon as they start their journey towards the port where they'll be leaving from, and then they sail on to Gaza.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you for sharing that with listeners and viewers. We'll be sure to have you back and catch up again. Madison Bannon, activist, mom, and storyteller in Johannesburg. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Fazika.